How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Detroit Lions franchise here on Madden 22. My name is Football Fan Forever, and this episode is a recap of the 3.5-hour live stream from this past Saturday that was our first off-season in this rebuild. I want to first thank everybody who came and watched and or supported this stream. I think the most we had on was 3 viewers at one point, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it was a new record for this channel, and it was so much fun to be able to interact with the people that did show up. If you happen to miss the live stream and want to watch all or some parts of it, it will stay on the channel for a bit here. But today's video will be an edited recap where we basically hit the highlights of the offseason and get to take a look at how this team has changed going into our second season in the series. Obviously, we saw very little success from our current roster, and I'm hopeful that the moves that we made this offseason can at least make us more competitive heading into year 2. This is obviously going to take a while before we're competing for a Super Bowl or even thinking about the playoffs, but I think that the moves that we made this offseason are going to put us in a better position to be competitive in our games. Speaking of competitive, it looks like Super Bowl 56 was a good one, with the Baltimore Ravens narrowly defeating the Arizona Cardinals 14-17 in the Super Bowl. From there, it was time to take a look at player retirements. Aaron Rodgers retires after 17 years. That one surprised me, especially given how successful the Packers were this past season. They made it all the way to the NFC Championship game. But his retirement shakes up the power dynamics of the NFC North, as we'll no longer have to worry about playing number 12 twice a year. The only Detroit Lions player to retire was Adrian Peterson, who called it quits after 15 seasons. Here's hoping he makes it into the Hall of Fame, as he's one of the best running backs in the league for a long stretch. And one notable name that is not on this list is Tom Brady. That's right. At age 45, he's going to come back for another season. Other big names that did retire would be Big Ben Roethlisberger and Larry Fitzgerald. After that, it was time to take a look at our pending free agent group, and we had several, most of them depth players or role players, some of them even practice squad players. 6 of our 8 wide receivers had expiring contracts, as well as 3 of our 4 middle linebackers. Those are both positions that I intended to overhaul over the course of the offseason, so I didn't have a lot of interest in bringing many of them back. Even valuable depth players like Charles Harris, who at 72 overall is one of our highest rated pending free agents, didn't have a whole lot of interest from me because of his age. At 27 years old, I wasn't convinced that he'd be able to produce at a decent level in 3 or 4 years when we are likely contending for a Super Bowl. Middle linebacker Alex Anzalone is also 27 years old, but he's one of our starters, and I had some interest in bringing him back as probably our middle linebacker 2 this offseason. So I offer him a 2-year deal with just less than $7 million, and he decides to test free agency. So I did lowball him a little bit. We'll check in on him later. But players like Khalif Raymond, who did not impress in his contract year, was shown his walking papers. I did have interest in bringing back Sean Dean Hamilton. I think he was one of our best defensive players when he was healthy, despite only being 69 overall. I don't necessarily think he's going to be a 3-down linebacker for us, but again, we need some starters at some point, so I decided to offer him a 2-year deal worth over $6 million here, and he decides to test free agency as well, in a little bit of a surprise. I gave him what he wanted, and unfortunately he didn't take it. Swing tackle Jamarco Jones was another 26-year-old that I had some interest in bringing back. He played pretty well despite his ratings for us last season, but I did lowball him a little bit to see what he would accept. And after some deliberation, Jamarco Jones decides that free agency is a good option for him. So we really swung and missed on a lot of our initial re-signings here, which led me to Jason Kabinda. Now he's 66 overall, but I decided that a 2-year deal made sense for him. He played well in our run game, and I'm interested in keeping him around for that in itself. So it was a pretty quiet re-sign phase for us. We had re-signed Jack Fox and David Blau earlier, but a lot of these players ended up hitting the free agent market, and we had some money to spend when we went into this as well, about $50 million in cap room. Teron Armstead headlined the free agent pool, but again, my approach to free agency was with the future in mind. I didn't want to start offering to players who weren't going to be valuable contributors in 3 or 4 years. So guys like Teron Armstead, Jason Kelsey, and Rob Gronkowski, even Casey Hayward, who's 32 years old, were not really on my radar. Same thing with Jameis Winston, who is the best quarterback available. He's got star development and he's 79 overall with a +1 morale boost. But he's 28 years old, and I didn't think he really had the skill set I was looking for in a quarterback. Someone like Kyle Trask caught my eye. He's 24, but he's still 66 overall, and I don't think he'd be a meaningful upgrade over Jared Goff, even with a bunch of development. I was definitely in the mark for a #1 wide receiver, and the closest that this free agent class got was Antonio Brown. But again, he's 34 years old, so I started looking elsewhere, and 2 names immediately caught my eye. One was Michael Gallup, who's 26 years old, star development. He's got a really well-rounded skill set, and he thrives creating separation at all 3 levels. He's also got pretty good hands and excellent leaping ability. The other name that caught my eye was Christian Kirk. He's just 25 years old. He's a little bit faster, but not quite as well polished as somebody like Michael Gallup. What enticed me most about Christian Kirk was his potential. He also had star development, and he's a year younger than Michael Gallup and might actually be a little bit cheaper. So I decided to offer him about $10 million for 4 years, keeping him with us through his age 29 season. And with a 91-point offer, we were actually the only team to have interest with him early on in the free agent period. After that, it was a search for a backup swing tackle here, and I came across Jerron Christian Sr., who's actually good enough to start for a couple of teams in the league if his rating is to be believed. He's 25 years old, and a 2-year, $8 million deal made sense to me. So we offered that in an attempt to bring him in to shore up our offensive line depth. With the departure of Evan Brown in free agency, I decided to look for a backup center and decided to offer a similar deal to Lamont Gallard, the 26-year-old out of Georgia. From there, it was time to look at the defensive side of the ball, and this is where I had the highest hopes for upgrading this team. A defensive tackle like Malik McDowell could play any of our 3 interior positions. He's got youth and star development on his side. He's also 6'6", which is great to have on your interior defensive line for swatting down passes. So the first offer that I made to him was a flat $6 million per year, noting that he did have plenty of other suitors. And that was only good enough for second place in what quickly turned to be a bidding war between us and the Super Bowl runners-up, the Arizona Cardinals. We went back to the offer sheet here and increased the total to over $19 million, and that was a 99-point offer to put us firmly in the driver's seat of the Malik McDowell sweepstakes. But we still had about $30 million in cap room, and there were other free agents that caught my eye, such as Chris Barnes, the middle linebacker. He's just 24 years old. He's got star development and a pretty well-rounded skill set at this point in his career, which meant that I thought that he'd be a great player to build our defense around for the future. There were several other teams interested in him, so we offered about $27 million over 4 years to put us in the driver's seat of that race as well. I also saw that Sean Dean Hamilton didn't have a lot of interest at this point, so decided to make him an offer as well and see where things went from there. It perhaps wasn't the most realistic move, but it's not unheard of for players to re-sign with their teams after testing free agency. But there's one more big name player I had some interest in, and that's Marcus Williams, the former New Orleans Saint. He's 86 overall at just age 25. He's also got star development, and he has a well-rounded skill set that would overhaul our defensive backfield. But it was going to be really expensive to get anywhere close to the kind of money he was asking, and I just didn't think that it would be viable for our team to invest so much into one player at this stage of our rebuild. So eventually withdraw that offer and take a look at our current list of offers heading into the second round of free agency here. Christian Kirk, Chris Barnes, Malik McDowell, backup left outside linebacker Frankie Louvu, Jerron Christian, Sean Dean Hamilton, and Lamont Gillard are the 7 offers we had out heading into the second round of free agency. It was at this point that one of my viewers suggested releasing Goff, but we'd still only get about $15 million in savings versus a $15 million cap penalty, so I decided to hold off on that for a bit and see where our first round of offers went. And right away there were a couple of decisions that really impacted the trajectory of our offseason. We do welcome back Sean Dean Hamilton, but Malik McDowell rejects our offer. Christian Kirk joins the team, Jerron Christian accepts the offer, so does Lamont Gillard. But Frankie Louvu and Chris Barnes join Malik McDowell in spurning us for other teams, despite having leads in those areas. And we ended up 0 for 3 on what I thought could be our potential impact signings on the defensive side of the ball. There were some big names on the move, however. Marlon Mack and Michael Gallup both end up as Houston Texans. Marcus Williams joins the Eagles. Jayan Brown is one of the other middle linebackers I had some interest in, signs with the Bengals. Dante Jackson goes to Jacksonville. Ronnie Harrison goes to the Bears, so we'll see him twice a year. Jameis Winston replaces Carson Wentz in Indianapolis. We'll see how he can do there. That was an interesting signing, but it made sense given the cap gymnastics they've been able to do. Keanu Neal makes one of the best defenses in the league even scarier by signing with the Super Bowl winning Ravens. That was a good signing by them. The top punter on the board in J.K. Scott goes to the Chiefs. Baltimore continues investing in their secondary. Morgan Fox goes to Houston. Chris Barnes spurned us for the Dolphins. He took a shorter contract, and I think that's smart of him to try and cash in again before he turns 28. Malik McDowell goes to the Arizona Cardinals in a little bit of a disappointing move for us. I think he would have been a solid addition to our interior defensive line. And that's about it for the really interesting signings here. With the first round of free agency over, we still had about $35 million in cap room, and I intended to spend some of that. And one of the players that caught my eye that might be a good depth player for us, as we need some pass rush, is Jabari Zuniga. I was intrigued by his combination of speed and strength, and the fact that he's got decent power moves make me think that he can contribute off the edge where we need a more traditional edge rusher. He's a little bit bigger than some of our outside linebackers, which might make him useful in our 3-3-5 Sam defensive formation. After missing out on Chris Barnes, I decided to go see if Alex Anzalone was still unsigned, and indeed he was. With free agency really not shaking out the way that I wanted it to, it meant that our draft was at least a little bit easier to figure out. And I see Alex Anzalone as having a lot of value as a sub-linebacker and potentially a middle linebacker too this upcoming season, especially on obvious passing downs. Why do I think he's going to be our second middle linebacker? Well, it's because with the number 1 overall pick, we have the option of selecting D'Angelo Carmichael, who's long been one of my favorite players in this draft class, but he tested off the charts at the combine. Another player who also tested well was quarterback Bob Hairston, who ran a 4.54 at his pro day and was top 7 in every single category, which painted a very rosy picture for the 21-year-old out of Florida. I've said before that he's my favorite quarterback in this draft class, and my only question is whether or not he was going to be around when we have our second first-round pick at number 16. The other player that many mock drafts had us taking number 1 overall was cornerback Andrew Wooden. we certainly could use the help on the secondary, and he ran a blazing 4.34. So it was going to be down between him and Carmichael as to who I was going to take with our first round pick. Our strategy in the later rounds is a little bit fuzzier, but players like Dexter Allen really caught my eye as well. Take a look at this combine. He was top 3 in every single category. And yes, we already have a young superstar tight end in TJ Hawkinson on the roster, but having 2 young superstar tight ends on the roster is not a bad problem to have. There were 2 more signings that we made in free agency, but one of them was technically a re-sign. Alex Anzalone rejoined us, and Jabari Zuniga does as well. But as a whole, our team didn't change a whole lot over free agency, which means that the difference makers in Season 2 were likely going to come from the draft or not at all. Of course, it would have been fun to be able to bring in some bigger name free agents to fill the holes on this roster, but it does mean that the young players we selected in the NFL draft are going to be able to cut their teeth and get ample playing time right out of the gate. As for our draft strategy, well, we are in the best player available mode, but we also have the luxury of picking number 1 overall, and I really like D'Angelo Carmichael. He tested off the charts, and we eventually figure out 100% of his scouting here thanks to the in-person workouts, and he has a top 5 talent for sure and looks like one of the best young talents in this draft class. He also meets us at a position of need at middle linebacker, so I'm guessing that he will be a day 1 starter for us, and the game even lists him as a top fit for our team. We head into the draft with 7 selections. We do not have a 4th rounder, but we do have 2 first rounders courtesy of the trade that sent Matthew Stafford to the Rams. With 3 picks in the first 33 selections, we've got plenty of opportunities to start turning this team around. And whenever you hold the number 1 overall pick, there are going to be plenty of teams calling with offers to trade up in order to have their pick at every single player in the draft. And this year was no different. Cleveland's offering multiple first-round picks, Buffalo's offering a first, a future second, and a 5th. But I was only considering trade offers that were in the top 5 here because I didn't want to move past the Pittsburgh Steelers, who were mocked to take D'Angelo Carmichael with their number 6 overall pick. So even a very competitive trade package like New England offering a pair of first-round picks and a 3rd-round pick wasn't enough to get me interested, but both New York and Philadelphia were going to offer an extra 3rd rounder on top of their 1st round pick, so we could move back just a couple of positions and pick up another selection for us in the middle area of this draft. And I eventually decided to trade with the Giants. This was a little bit of a risk because I wasn't sure exactly who they had in mind in terms of trading up. But I figured we'd get either Carmichael or Andrew Wooden, and both, in my eye, are top 5 talents. So it was time to see who the Giants took with the number 1 overall pick, and they stunned me by taking left tackle Landry Jackson. Jackson is probably the best player in this draft, but I didn't know the Giants had interest in him, and the Eagles were mocked to draft him in all of the mock drafts this season. But Philadelphia goes quarterback, and they take Steve Knowles out of West Virginia. So we are on the board at number 3, basically in the same position we were last time, only with an extra 3rd rounder to spend in the draft. So from then on, it was a pretty easy selection for us to take D'Angelo Carmichael with our first pick in the draft, number 3 overall, and we will see more about his abilities later, but right out the bat, we know he has got the potential to be a special player with hidden development and really no weaknesses right now in his game. I'm very excited to see him on the field. Then it was time for us to keep an eye on the draft to make sure that there wasn't risk of Bob Hairston being selected sooner than it was expected. The final mock draft didn't have him going in the 1st round, but despite the quarterback-heavy draft class here, there are lots of teams who are in the market for a quarterback. You see Mason Potter go to the Steelers. The Cincinnati Bengals also end up selecting a quarterback, which is a head-scratching move, so I will edit Ed McClain into next year's draft class and change his player model to a position of need with the same overall for the Bengals, so they do get some value for that pick. He wouldn't have seen the field behind Joe Burrow. The Vikings, surprise here, go cornerback in the first round. Steven Harrison out of Memphis has the potential to be a solid player for them, but he wasn't the top cornerback on my board, and two players I had interest in were still available when we picked at number 16. It was then that I decided to risk again trading back in the first round, as the Atlanta Falcons were offering a pair of fourth round picks in this year and next year's draft in order to move up one selection. And I wasn't sure if they were going to take a quarterback. I figure Harrison is probably the best quarterback available, at least by my ranking. But after some deliberation, I decided to get the extra draft capital. So we make that trade as well, and then decide to sweat out who Atlanta is choosing here. And they go Rashad Cooks, wide receiver out of Ole Miss. I could have continued trading down if I'd wanted to, but I was already on the edge of my seats and worried that Bob Harrison was going to be taken. He was the number 4 quarterback on the board, but I didn't really like any of the other options, so I decided to make Bob Hairston our second pick in the NFL draft here, and he is an athletic freak. Did have normal development, which kind of surprised me, but he's 21 years old, and he's got 92 throw power. Unfortunately, the cornerback that I wanted, Andrew Wooden, did not fall to the second round like I'd hoped. He ended up going number 23 overall to the Jacksonville Jaguars, who added a couple of new starters at their cornerback position through free agency and the draft. But there were still plenty of other young talents available at the top of the second round when we picked next. There were still plenty of quality players at this stage, but I narrowed it down to 2. Left end Melvin Goodrich and defensive tackle Devin Woodson. Now, defensive tackle isn't exactly a need for us, but it's hard not to be impressed with the physical tools that Devin Woodson brings to the table. He tested top 3 among his position group in every category except for the 3-cone drill. And he's got elite speed and great strength. So I decided that that might make him versatile enough to overlook his potential for being a little bit more of a raw player at this point. And we are rewarded with him having 92 strength, 79 speed, and most importantly, hidden development. So we've hit on a couple of picks here early on. And at the beginning of the third round, we had back-to-back picks. I figured it was time to address our secondary, and once again I narrowed it down to a couple of selections. Cornerback Alan Pounds has a press man archetype that I really like, while Sean Francois has another excellent combine. He tested number 1 in every single category with the exception of bench reps, running a 4.37 at his college pro day. He doesn't look to be as solid in coverage just yet as Alan Pounds, but the physical tools are there to make him a really strong player, and you can always develop the coverage skills later on, while innate athleticism, like what he brings to our team, is impossible to teach. He's also just 21 years old, and he's 6'2" with incredible athleticism. So with some development, he might turn into a very good cornerback for us. After that, it was time to select workout warrior and hometown kid Dexter Allen from Michigan. He had a day 3 grade on him, but these kind of physical tools were not ones that I was comfortable letting fall even to the 4th round. 86 speed, 88 acceleration, 86 agility. I can't wait to see what he can do in our offense. With Atlanta's 4th rounder, we head to the offensive side of the ball once again and look at Deshaun Stevenson. He's got one of my favorite skill sets in the draft. He's 5'5", ran a 4.45, and has a receiving back archetype if our scouting is correct. He is not necessarily a 3-down back, but I like this combination of skills and figure that we needed a 3rd down back to help spell DeAndre Swift this season. He kind of reminds me of Darren Sproles, so I'm excited to see what he can do with the ball in his hands. In the 5th round, there were still some really talented players left, and one of the ones that rose to the top was James Winter. I was kind of surprised he fell this far because he had a 3rd or 4th round grade on him. He won't wow you with any of his key ratings, but he did test really well at the Combine and his Pro Day. So while he has normal development, he's going to be flying around the field for us with 91 speed and a 6'2" frame. In the 6th round, we head back to our defensive line with the selection of Tyrell Williams. At this point, you're picking for depth, and he showed a pretty decent skill set, a B in block shedding and C for power moves, which had me interested in picking him up. So despite his undrafted free agent grade, we decided to make him our 6th round selection, and I think he'll be able to compete for some playing time as a reserve. With our final selection, pick number 19 in the 7th round, we head to our defensive line once again and take Lucas Para. He'll be a developmental player for us, but now we get to take a look at all of their rookie ratings here. And there's a lot to be excited about. D'Angelo Carmichael looks to be a force. He can cover sideline to sideline and has excellent tackling skills. His coverage needs a little bit of work, but he's a really solid day one starter for us, and I can't wait to see how he performs in our defense. Bob Hairston will get plenty of opportunity to show what he can do. He's got the scrambler archetype right now, but his accuracy numbers aren't that bad. They're actually better than I was expecting, and he's got 92 throw power, which means that he is going to be able to push the ball down the field in ways that Jared Goff and David Blau aren't able to. He is a little bit fumble prone, but 88 speed is going to be able to extend a lot of plays, and one of his strengths is throwing on the run. Perhaps the most fun surprise was Devin Woodson here. He was on my draft board, but I wasn't sure if he'd fall to us in the 2nd round. He's got 92 strength, 82 power moves, and decent block shedding here. And he actually might see the field more as a pass rusher in nickel and dime formations. I am going to move him to left end so I can sub him in different positions on the defensive line, as he's definitely got the athleticism to contribute in a lot of different areas. Sean Francois will be a little bit of a project here. His coverage skills are not great across the board, but he's got good play recognition and excellent athleticism. Dexter Allen is 75 overall. Look at this skill set. Decent route running, good hands, excellent speed, and the ability to run block. He can do it all, and he is very quickly going to be our number 2 tight end behind TJ Hawkinson. They are going to be a tough duo to cover. Deshaun Stevenson looks like a human joystick here. 96 change of direction. He's got a good juke move, but it's his receiving ability that really sticks out to me. Look at this. 78 short routes, 74 medium routes, and 78 in catching as well. He's going to be a weapon for us out of the backfield. James Winter might be 68 overall, but he's going to get to see the field fairly often as he is our highest rated backup safety. He's going to have to work hard if he wants to crack the starting lineup, but the potential and the athleticism is hard to ignore. Same with Tyrell Williams, who is 69 overall with a +1 bonus. He's got really good strength and good tackling ability, so he could push John Panisini for the number 2 defensive tackle spot behind Aline McNeil. Finally, Lucas Para out of Clemson will be a developmental project. There's really not a whole lot to build on just yet besides decent physical tools. But he was a 7th round selection, so it's not like we're expecting him to step up and contribute on day one. He'll have a couple seasons to try and figure out this NFL thing and see how he grows as a player. We weren't the only team with an exciting draft, however, as several computer teams drafted really well. Andrew Edwards finds a home in Green Bay, and he's got pretty solid cover skills. They also shore up their secondary with the addition of Emmett Hendricks, who can grow as a cover safety but looks to be ready to contribute against the run from day one. But their big selection was quarterback Brian Bacon, who's got some big Aaron Rodgers-sized shoes to step into. He's got a cannon for an arm, but the accuracy and the overall awareness are just not there for him to start. We'll see if he beats out Jordan Love this preseason. The Vikings went all defense with their first 3 picks, as Mike Zimmer is still the coach there. Steven Harrison has hidden development. He's 74 overall and is a press zone corner with excellent speed and acceleration. They also selected Melvin Goodrich, and he looks to be a decent player. Good strength, decent speed, excellent block shedding for a rookie, and room to grow as a pass rusher. They also add Deacon Freeman in the 3rd round to shore up their pass rush and make it even scarier. The Bears, in my opinion, got one of these steals of the draft with wide receiver Dave Goodrich. He fell into the 2nd round and looks to be an electrifying playmaker and, in my opinion, is one of the best wide receivers in this class. They also selected strong safety Randy Hurst, who is 72 overall, looks to be really solid against the run and against the pass. And they took left end Sean Guy, who is a great value pick for them. There's a lot of new faces in the NFC North. But take a look at this draft from the Eagles. They absolutely crushed this with 5 selections, at least 70 overall. Of course, Steve Knowles is their big pick, number 2 overall, and he is as NFL ready as it gets at this point in his career. Good selection by the Eagles there. Emmanuel Spriggs is a 76 overall hidden development cornerback, and he goes to the Atlanta Falcons, while number 1 overall pick Landry Jackson is 80 overall and looks to be the best player in this draft class if memory serves in terms of both his overall and the fact that he has 0 weaknesses in his game. Andrew Wooden has normal development, but he has 95 speed and 77 man coverage. His zone coverage needs a little bit of work, but he can immediately match up with the elite wide receivers in this league and keep up with them. He's also a turnover machine with 85 catching, and I would have liked to have been able to select him, but it just didn't work out. After the NFL draft, there was one more move to make. As we head into the new season and Jared Goff's contract extension kicks in, it now makes financial sense for us to release him, along with the fact that this is Bob Hairston's team. We spent a 1st round pick on a rookie quarterback. He's not going to get any better sitting on a bench behind Jared Goff. So we take the $15 million cap penalty but free up over $25 million in cap space, which we can use to add some undrafted free agents to our roster. This is Bob Hairston's team at this point. I'm rolling with him as quarterback. He will wear number 7 for us. I haven't quite figured out his cosmetics here just yet. I think he should look a little bit cooler than he does right now. But I'm looking forward to seeing what he can bring to our team. He's got the Slinger 3 release, which is nice and quick. We knew that about him heading into the draft. So it might be a trial by fire this season, but I can't wait to see how he grows as a quarterback. So that just about does it for our off-season recap here as we head into year number 2. We only really added 2 immediate starters on each side of the ball, but our most significant moves came in the players that will grow into starters for us down the line. I said this before, but we didn't make hardly any splash moves in free agency, so most of the rookies that we selected in the NFL draft are going to see significant playing time, and that has me really excited to see how they do in Season 2. So that is it for today's episode. Thank you so much for watching. The next video I hope to have up is the preseason highlight video, so that might take me a little bit to work on, but thank you for your patience, and like always, I will catch you next time.